It seems like every time I get into a discussion with somebody about who Yeshua is, who Jesus is, and I bring up positive texts about him being the promised Messiah, the Son of God, they never answer anything that I say, and they just immediately go to John 8:58. Well, before Abraham was, I am. He said he was the I am, Matthew. Haven't you read the Gospel of John, Matthew? As though I just didn't know that verse was in there, right? It's best to understand Yeshua's statement in John 8:58 by the Gospel of John as a whole. The first I am text in John's Gospel is in John chapter 4, where Yeshua is talking with a Samaritan woman at the well. The woman says, we know that when the Messiah comes, he will be able to tell us everything. And Yeshua says, I that speak to you am he. I am the Messiah, the one you just asked or spoke about. So that sets the stage for the I am sayings in the Gospel of John. Then when you get to John 8, prior to verse 58 in John 8, Yeshua says in that same chapter, I am the light of the world, and I am the Son of Man. The light of the world is a title that doesn't just belong to Yeshua. He also shares that title with his disciples, his emissaries. In Matthew 5, he says, you're the light of the world. I think it's verse 16. And Son of Man is something that goes back to Daniel 7, where you have the Ancient of Days, that is Yahweh. He gives this power, authority, and rule to this human figure, which is what Son of Man means, a human being. So when Yeshua finally says in John 8 at its climax, before Abraham was, I am, or more correctly, I am he, because of the lack of the predicate noun there in verse 58, he is referring back to him being the Son of Man, the light of the world, and the promised Messiah. And there's also an extra biblical book where Yahweh visited Abraham in a night vision and revealed to him the coming of his Mashiach, his anointed one. What about Exodus 3:14? When you look at Exodus 3:14, popularly you'll see I am who I am, or I am that I am. It is more correctly translated there from the Hebrew Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh as I will be who I will be. I'm not just promising my help and sustenance right now in this moment, Moshe. I will be who I will be, meaning I'm going to be with you. And if you just back up a few verses, even in the KJV, where it says, I am that I am in all caps in verse 14, in verse 12, he already promises Moshe, he says, I will certainly be with thee. And it's the same phrase, the Ehyeh there. And so he's not necessarily saying I am in Exodus 3:14, but I will be. That's the first point. And then if you look at the Greek Septuagint translation of Exodus 3, ego and me is only the build-up to who he claims to be in the Septuagint. It's ego and me, ho'on. Ho'on is the being. I am is just a precursor to who he's claiming to be. I am the being. Some people say, well, the Jews picked up stones to stone him. They understood what he was talking about. We should not take our cue of what Yeshua meant by the people that were against Yeshua. There's a misunderstanding motif throughout the Gospel of John where Yeshua says something and then somebody misunderstands. Look at Nicodemus in John 3, or look at the Jews in John 6 when he says, eat my flesh and drink my blood. When Yeshua makes a proclamation and his accusers or people that hate him think he's saying one thing, we shouldn't take our cue from his accusers. On the heels of that, let me say that them stoning him or wanting to stone him does not mean that they thought he was claiming to be Yahweh. They could have just thought he was claiming to be the promised Mashiach. And because they thought he was a false teacher, or they thought he was a false Messiah, and he was causing so much trouble, even calling them children of the devil there in John 8, they picked up stones to stone him because he was claiming a position or a title for himself that they didn't believe he was.